Welcome, Locked On Giants and Locked On Pirates fans, to a special crossover with myself, Ethan Smith, the host of the Locked On Pirates podcast, and of course, Ben Kaspick to my right and to my left actually, technically with the way this goes. I always get that confused. But Ben Kaspick of the Locked On Giants podcast, and on today's episode, we are going to be covering the series between these two teams at PNC Park this weekend. Of course, San Francisco heavily favored to win this series, but we're going to get into a couple of things regarding this series. The Giants, of course, entering this series, winning four of their last five and coming off of a sweep of the Dodgers. The Pirates coming into the series, ending a 9-game losing streak. So I guess we'll start there, Ben, is the Giants, as usual, like I always say about the Giants, the Cardinals, and stuff like that, those kind of teams, consistent again as always. I mean, I don't think there ever is a lack of consistency when it comes to the Giants and the Cardinals and Atlanta, teams like that right now. What is the root of why you guys are so consistent right now and why you're 8 games over 500?
Well, it's funny because I think a lot of Giants fans would say that they haven't been consistent, but I get what you mean 100%. Like you just look up and they've got a good to solid being on the low end when they're struggling a little bit, and then close to 10 games over 500 right now when things are going better. And so the key for them, I mean, it's kind of a well-rounded approach. I wouldn't say they're not one of these teams that has like superstar talent, especially like last year they had some with Posey, who to me is a Hall of Famer, but he retired.
Hmm.
And Chris Bryant was acquired at the deadline, but he left. And so if you look at the roster, you're not necessarily going to be like wowed by all the star talent, but they just have kind of quality players up and down, not just like the starting lineup, but including their bench, and not just their top two starters, but all five. And throughout the bullpen, but it has been a struggle at times for the bullpen, for some of the starters. And then defensively, I know this wasn't really your question, but defensively, they have had problems. So, uh, kind of underrated offense, platoon advantages, the way that Gabe Kapler puts guys in position to have success they just kind of eke out every little advantage that they can, and it generally leads to pretty good results.
Yeah, I mean, I would go ahead and agree with you about defense. The Pirates have also had a ton of issues defensively. And one of the funny things that I like to bring up in a series like this, where the Giants, of course, on paper and overall, are just a much better team than the Pirates are. I don't think anybody else, even my wonderful listeners at the Locked On Pirates podcast, are going to disagree with that sentiment. The Giants enter this game with a plus 40 run differential. Meanwhile, Ben, I want you to guess what the Pirates' run differential is going into the series.
You know, I look at things like this, and I don't have it pulled up now, but I believe it's about minus 100, or
M- uh,
maybe even a little more than that.
Minus 101. It's the second worst in the league, only ahead of the Washington Nationals, who are at a minus 113. Now, what I always find funny, though, is that stat means something, but it also doesn't, because I mean, you have a team like the Marlins who have a plus 22 run differential and are 5 games under 500. So you never know. Run differential is kind of interesting, but what do you think the keys going into this series are for the Giants to pretty much handle business? I would say against a lowly Pirates team. I know it's my team, but I'm not going to sit here and act like the Pirates are supposed to win this series.
Yeah, for me, it's run prevention. I think that the Giants, like I said, their offense, it might not, you're not going to see a Mike Trout or just these big Aaron Judge or any of those guys, but they do just manage to put up around 5 runs a game. And if you can do that against the Pirates and keep them down from scoring 5, 6 runs themselves, if you can keep them to 3, 2 runs in these games, that's really the key. And they haven't always been able to do that. They've allowed too many runs for a team that has not just playoff aspirations, but really a team that should be trying to win it all. They need to be better at preventing runs. So, and for me, it comes up. It's not just always the pitching. Sometimes it's the defense, and sometimes it's one specific reliever comes in and gives up 3, 4 runs in the outing. So against a team like the Pirates, they have some talented players, no doubt. Every team does. And the Pirates specifically have some talented young players who are exciting and fun. And it's just going to be a matter of keeping those guys down and just keeping runs off the board. I think the Giants will ultimately get their runs, most likely, although it's not the most offensive park to play in. It's kind of can be tough to hit the ball out of the ballpark, for example, there. But I think the Giants will ultimately get their runs, and it's just a matter of preventing them.
Yeah, and that's one thing that the Pirates, for instance, have had issues with is preventing runs. Of course, in the Cardinal series, they lose 9-1, 7-5, 3-1, and then win 6-4. But you alluded to the bullpen issues. The Pirates win that first game in St. Louis if they don't have bullpen issues, which is oddly enough funny because, as I mentioned to you before we started recording today, David Bednar over this calendar year has the best ERA in all of baseball among relievers. That's awesome. David Bednar can't pitch every day. I mean, it's not something that can be done. But when you're up 5-0 at Busch Field or Busch Stadium, and you end up losing 7-5, there's a real cause for concern there. So I'd say for the Pirates, a lot like you mentioned with the Giants, scoring runs and preventing runs. And as I always say, that sounds so arbitrary. It sounds like the simplest answer you can give, but a lot of times it dives into the more complex part of it to say, okay, for instance, tonight for both teams, this would be their goal. Carlos Rodon, Zach Thompson, two guys under 4.5 ERA, so pretty average. But what you're looking for out of those guys is to get 4 or 5 runs of uh, no runs. I mean, that's what you're really looking for, right? And then you want the bullpen to come in, back your guy up who had a good start, and that arguably could be the difference in this series. And that's what I really think it's going to boil down to is which team strikes first and which starting pitchers pitch well. Which for
Mm-hmm.
the Giants, I would say across this 3 game series, you have Rodon. I believe tomorrow you have Alex Wood against Jose Quintana, which will be a good matchup. And then Sunday you have Keller and Alex Cobb, who are both above 5 ERAs. So is starting pitching, you think, going to be the main concern, or are you more concerned about bullpen pitching for both of these teams as being a difference factor in a 3 game set like this?
From the Giants' perspective, it's more of the defense and just kind of the weird inning that gets away from them. Where
Hmm.
what's crazy this season, we've played a lot of games. It's not like super early anymore, and yet the Giants have had this consistent problem with just kind of, these like broken bat type of hits, these little blooper hits, or these slow swinging bunt type of hits escalating. Like maybe it happens in a big spot or it happens leading off an inning, and then the heart of the order comes up, and then they just give up that really like unclutch from the Giants' perspective or clutch hit from the other team's perspective. Because as you know, like you can hold a team down for like a whole game, but then if one inning they load the bases and they get that bases clearing double, it can completely change a game. And it seems like that has happened a lot with the starting pitching. It's happened to Alex Cobb. Like if you look at Alex Cobb and you mentioned his ERA, it's high, but the kind of peripheral numbers are so much better. It's not just like, oh, he should be better. It's like he should be a great pitcher by a lot of these underlying numbers. Expected ERA says this. He has one of the best expected ERAs in baseball, and yet the actual ERA is like one of the worst in baseball. So it's kind of
Hmm.
crazy that we've seen that. But with Carlos Rodon specifically, who goes tonight, he has at times looked like a Cy Young contender. Like when he's on, he can just be completely overpowering. He started out the season that way with a consistent stretch of being that way, and then he went through a funk that lasted about 5 outings. But then in his last couple, he's turned it around, and so that's the thing to watch for me tonight. And you can usually tell right away. So if he comes out in the first inning and he's just kind of pumping strikes with his upper 90s fastball and just guys swing and miss through fastballs that might be like kind of right over the plate just because it's such a good pitch when it's on. So you can tell right away if he's out there just blowing guys away in the first, it could be a long night for the Pirates offense. But if there's a lot of contact against the fastball, then it could be a sign that he's off. And if he's off, it's a game that might be a little more evenly matched. But from my perspective, I hope that he continues being on.
Oh yeah, of course. And Zach Thompson again as well. I alluded to him yesterday or Wednesday on my podcast actually about Zach Thompson over his last couple of starts. I mean, he's pitched over 5 innings or at 5 innings in 4 of his last 5, and he's done well. And the Pirates have won 3 of those 5 games. So I mean, seems like we got two pitchers that are coming into this doing a lot better as of late, which is very good. And with it being very, very warm outside right now, especially out there in the Bay Area and in Savannah, Georgia, I assume the Bay Area it's probably warm right now. I'm not really sure. After winning the NBA Finals yesterday, it's probably really, really um, hot out there. But
Oh yeah.
Athletic Greens, of course, can help you with a lot of this stuff. Athletic Greens, of course, is our next partner, and they have a product that I use all the time. I started taking AG1 because I didn't have time. I wanted better gut health, more energy, an optimized immune system. I hate taking pills and vitamins. I absolutely despise it. And I wanted a supplement that actually tastes great and wanted to see what the hype was about. So, what is this stuff? Well, with one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, one, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things you need for a productive day. It's also lifestyle friendly. And whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy free, or gluten free, it's good for you and contains less than 1 gram of sugar and costs you less than $3 a day. So you're investing in your health and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. So right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. Of course, it just fits in 1 cup of water per day. Very convenient. And that's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1 year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/MLB network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/MLB network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And another fun component going into this series is Brian Reynolds, which you've talked to me about this before, that Giants fans have a real nostalgia with Brian Reynolds, who last year, of course, makes his first All Star game, comes onto the scene as one of the top center fielders in all of baseball. Trade rumors abound that he was going to end up in Miami, he was going to end up in New York, he was going to end up in LA. You know, he's going to end up everywhere, right? This year he starts the year pretty slow, but over this last road stand, hitting 500 on the nose, so he's pulled his average up to a 257. He's starting to look more like the Brian Reynolds of old. Who would you say for the Giants in that case is kind of having that Brian Reynolds track of starting the season slow, but now starting to come around a little bit more?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I'm not sure there really is someone who fits into that right at this moment. There's been guys who had a tough start and like a really tough start. And for example, Darren Ruff, and he was kind of an under the radar unsung hero of the last couple of years and last year specifically when they won 107 games. He had a miserable start and then he had a great May for the most part, but then he's kind of back into being uh, to struggling a little bit. And Mike Yastrzemski, he also kind of started slow, and then he was so good, and then he's currently kind of in a dip. So right now, like even though the Giants did just have a good homestand and they went 6-3, they swept the Dodgers, which was great. They actually didn't hit great on the homestand, and so
Hmm.
I'm struggling to think they're just getting some guys back, like Brandon Belt, who's a really big part of their team. He just came back from a long stint on the injured list, and they have some other guys who are out, like Lamont Wade Jr. and others. Um, yeah, I'm not sure there actually surprisingly is someone who currently falls into that category, but
Well,
yeah,
and going to Darren Ruff, I guess you could say he had a rough start.
I guess you could.
Sure, you guys have probably heard that one enough. But then also, of course, you look at the different comparisons of these two teams. Of course, as I'm recording and as we're recording this here, the Pirates do not have a lineup card yet. But nobody has to tell you that whatever the Pirates throw out there versus whatever the Giants throw out there, even with a guy like Brian Reynolds, like even with a guy like Jose Quintana, it's very interesting to see how these two teams operate. Because the Giants, on one hand, pride themselves on keeping guys and keeping them for a long time. I've noticed that over my 23 years of being on this planet that the Giants are notorious for keeping guys like forever. Brian Wilson comes to mind. Buster Posey comes to mind. Um, I mean, there's a bunch of different guys that come to mind that I could go on and on and on about probably. But you look up and down their lineup, Yastrzemski, awesome guy. Uh, Jock Peterson, who they picked up. I don't ever see him leaving the Bay Area personally. Brandon Belt, Timo, is his name? Yeah, Teero Estrada. I don't know why I thought his name was Timo. Brandon Crawford. I mean, you guys have all this veteran leadership on this team, and then you switch it over to the Pirates, where Brian Reynolds is probably the most seasoned guy on the team. After that, Ben Gamel, Key Brian Hayes, you're getting into that kind of dynamic. So for the Pirates, what do you think they have to do to kind of move into this trajectory that the Giants have kind of created for themselves, which is consistent winning and consistent contribution from whoever's in the lineup every day?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? They got to keep their good players first and foremost. And I know, like, I think about this sometimes. You mentioned Brian Reynolds, and I think about that trade. And I remember, just being on social media around the time of the trade, you can see what Pirates fans' reactions were to losing such an iconic player in Pirates history in McCutchen, and it was mostly negative. A lot of people understood that he was entering the last year of his contract, and you were able to get some young talent for him. But I mean, that move was hugely significant in helping the Pirates, even though they traded away one of the best players in franchise history in McCutchen. And so I don't want to sit here and say you got to trade away your good players, but in some cases it does make sense. And in that case it did, and it worked out really well. But also, like, you got to keep Brian Reynolds. The idea that they were going to trade him never made sense to me because he's still young. He's still under club control for multiple years, like more than just a few, right? It's like 4 years or so of club
Not
control.
anymore, actually. So earlier this year, he actually signed that 2 year, $13.5 million extension to avoid arbitration for the
Hmm.
final 2 years of his arbitration. So after 2024, going into 2025, I believe, is when he'll be a unrestricted free agent. But even then, I mean, the guy's 27 years old, and you're telling me that he wouldn't be an unrestricted free agent until he's 31, 30 years old. I mean, if he doesn't have a catastrophic dip, I see no reason to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because then you start thinking about because the Pirates, they need more, right? They're not quite there where they have the talent to compete on a consistent level. And so they need more. And so there's a case, I guess, to be made that if you trade him when he has a ton of value, you could maybe get multiple good players in return and potentially get somehow improve down the road. But it's a tough sell when you're talking about a guy who's very good. It's like, oh yeah, getting rid of him is going to be the better option. I really liked that they extended Key Brian Hayes. I think that that is a huge positive move in the right direction, just to lock up when you've got young talent like that, just to lock them up. These, like, the Giants did this with Buster Posey. I don't have terms of the Key Brian Hayes extension pulled up, but I'm sure you know it off the top of your head. But for Posey, the Giants gave him like a 12-year deal when he was in his like second or third year in the league. And that was a hugely beneficial move to them because they locked up a star player who was homegrown and was a great leader and wanted to be there. And just that stability of having a very good player on your team and you know they're going to be there, and it's a good, sometimes you can get kind of a under market contract because the player is sacrifice, they're gaining stability that they wouldn't otherwise have if you don't give them the extension. So I don't see a ton of Brian Reynolds is possibly a guy you could try to extend. He is a little bit of a different case because he's a little older now than Hayes was at the time of the extension. But whenever you've got some very good prospects, right? Like O'Neal Cruz, right? And extending that guy. I mean, give him a long term extension kind of right now, and you would get an under market contract because he would be getting stability that he totally wouldn't otherwise have. So those types of moves I think are a good place to start, and then you just have to be willing to spend some money to supplement the roster as well, which just seemed like a problem from afar.
Yeah, another problem from afar is that O'Neal Cruz was rumored to be a part of the lineup this evening. I mean, there's still about a little over an hour and a half left before as we're recording. I mean, I don't think he's going to be here, but extending O'Neal Cruz, I think, is something they're going to definitely have to look into, and I think they should definitely look into it. But I mean, if the Pirates could be the Giants, I'd be perfectly okay with that rather than being 12 games under 500. Would Pirates fans be? Probably not, because Pittsburgh fans are spoiled by the Penguins and the Steelers. Shout out, by the way, again to Ben. I believe you are a Warriors fan, I
Oh
think.
yeah, oh yeah.
So shout out to Steph Curry getting his fourth NBA championship and finally his first finals MVP, which was rightfully deserved. And, got to do what you got to do when it comes to the betting scene. And if you look at that ticker on the bottom, if you used betonline.ag to bet on the Warriors last night to win, you probably won some money with it being in TD Garden. And if you want to bet on this series, where me and Ben are going to get into our predictions for this series, make sure you use Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's Stanley Cup Finals and Major League Baseball. BetOnline, of course, is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. And BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. By the way, the Giants are minus 210 favorites tonight. Pittsburgh plus 180. The over under line is 8. And Bet Online is where the game starts. So, predictions galore, as I always do on these crossovers. 3 game set, beautiful PNC Park. First game a night game, second game an afternoon game, third game an afternoon game. What what do you think happens in this series? Like, Jock Peterson might hit 20 home runs in PNC Park, but anyways, reasonably, how do you think this series goes for the Giants, and what do you think player wise, record wise, that will happen in this series?
I think that, I mean, it's not some kind of hot take that the Giants find a way to win the series. I don't almost ever predict a sweep, and I'm not going to do it again here, but it's one where I actually have to think about maybe making a prediction of a sweep. But I think the Pirates, I think tonight is probably the game where I'm thinking the Giants are the most favored, and it has everything to do with Carlos Rodon and his ability to just shut down an opposing lineup when he's on, and when you're facing an opposing lineup that's not a playoff contender, that's especially a situation where you say he should be able to do his thing. But with Quintana, who's had a nice season with the Pirates, and Mitch Keller, who's got some really nasty stuff, I think that there's definitely the possibility that they go out and pitch well enough to win one of the games of this series. And other than that, like specific player predictions, Jock Peterson going yard is definitely always a solid prediction. He doesn't start against lefties, so that's another reason that, with Quintana, he does sometimes. Quintana starting the second game, it's a different lineup you're going to see. That's part of what the Giants do. It's like they have a whole different group of players that start when it's a lefty versus when it's a righty. And Hopefully the Giants defense, I mean, it's like it wouldn't be a crazy prediction to say the Giants are going to make some kind of defensive mistake that costs them. It happened just in their most recent game against the Royals. You know, the Royals are similarly and even more so arguably a team that the Giants should be able to take care of, and in their last game they made a critical error in the first inning that led to 2 runs, and they weren't really able to come back from that, which is something you would think they would be able to do. So, when you mentioned the over under, just my last kind of prediction for tonight, I think 8 is high, given what I said about Rodon. So I would take the under on 8 runs being scored tonight.
And are you taking? I would assume you would also probably take money line on San Francisco tonight as well, minus 210. I'm a big first 5 innings guy. It's something I wish that Bet Online had. I'm not sure if they added it yet, but betting on the first 5 innings of a baseball game is really ridiculous stuff. It's really fun. Um, as far as my predictions go, I'm in agreement with you. I think the Pirates being at home here, I think will propel them to at least one win. I think again, you mentioned the Quintana start. I think that's their best shot to do so. But this team surprises me a lot. They could win tonight and then lose the next two. It wouldn't
Mhm.
surprise me at all. Um, what I'm looking for again is the starting pitching has kind of fluctuated a little bit, but it's starting to get to a point now where the Pirates pitching is a lot better than it was to start the year. A lot of these guys are finally starting to come into their own. You mentioned Mitch Keller last start in Busch Stadium, 2 earned runs over 5 innings. I'll take that every single day with him. His ERA was below a 5 finally, but it went back up after Anthony Bonda imploded in the 5th inning. Quintana, of course, you mentioned having a little bit of a resurgent season, which I've repeatedly said I think he's going to have a Tyler Anderson career arc. Tyler Anderson, of course, almost pitched a no hitter the other night for the Dodgers. He was on the Pirates last year, gets traded to the Mariners. Now he's a commodity in the league again. I think the same thing's going to happen with Quintana if he continues to play well. I think he's going to get traded for a mid level prospect or even a low tier prospect, something to get back in return to a contender, maybe the Giants. You never know. And I think he's going to resurge his career. As far as predictions go for players, I just want to see Brian Reynolds bring that hot streak back home. Realistically, it's something that should happen, but we'll see if he can. I'm not expecting the guy to keep hitting 500. I'm going to be honest. That's just the most unreasonable thing in the world to expect a guy to hit 500 over the course of 10 games. It's something that happens all the time, but I wouldn't expect it to continue here. But I do think he needs to at least stay on that track. But I would like to see more of the offense kind of join Key Brian Hayes, Michael Chavis, and Brian Reynolds, kind of the big three of the offense right now. Like I want to see Cal Mitchell continue to do well. I want to see Jack Sawinski continue to do well as a rookie. Diego Castillo, those kind of guys. I want to continuously see these guys do well, and it's unfortunate as well because Kanan Smith and Jigba just got placed on the 60-day IL shortly after his debut. And then you have Tucapita Marcano, a bunch of those other young guys. I just want to see the young guys, excuse me, make it a competitive series. The Giants are a better team. If they go out there and lose 2 of 3, but all the games are competitive, Ben, you're not going to have any complaints from me.
Yeah, and Brian Reynolds, just by the way, it seems to me at least, I don't have the numbers, but he just always seems to do well against the Giants. And it's crazy when you're mentioning all these names too, Quintana and Bonda and somebody else you even mentioned besides Reynolds, former Giants. Quintana was on the Giants last year, and I think Bonda might have been as well. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of kind of there's a thread that runs between these two teams. So that's always an interesting storyline. Kyle Crick for a long time, he was a former Giants draft pick. I think he was also involved in that McCutcheon trade.
Yes, he was.
So, and one more guy to watch in terms of a prediction, Luis Gonzalez, who I think a lot of people maybe haven't even heard of because he is a rookie and he really was a nobody until this year. He is having a very nice kind of breakout season for the Giants. They've had breakout seasons like every year for the last several years with Lamont Wade Jr. and before that Mike Yastrzemski, who's probably now their best player. So Luis Gonzalez is having that kind of an impact right now, and I think he's leading off tonight. So he's a guy to look out for and to pay attention to.
Sounds good. Well, of course, Pirates Giants. I almost said Pirates Dodgers. I almost got canceled by Ben's entire fan base. Pirates Giants. PNC Park 7:05 Eastern. 3-game set begins tonight. Again, as you see on the ticker on the bottom, make sure you follow at Locked On Pirates and at LO_SF Giants. Sorry, I had to
Yeah.
wait for it to come back around.
Yeah, it's a
We
little
have a lot of
funky.
Giants. Yeah, we have a little bit. We have a lot of Giants among the Locked On hosts. But Ben does a phenomenal job over there in San Francisco. Over here in Pittsburgh, we're just hoping maybe we surprise the Giants and get a win. We've been good against the NL West this year. Our only series we lost against the NL West was a sweep to the Colorado Rockies.
Go figure. Hey, thank you for sweeping the Dodgers. That was
Oh, you're
awesome.
welcome. Of
That was
course.
awesome.
Just doing our due diligence as America's favorite team for 3 days. But Ethan Smith of the Locked On Pirates podcast. That is Ben Kaspick of the Locked On Giants podcast. Of course, this episode coming at you on Friday, so you will see both of us on our respective shows come Monday, probably recapping this series and whatever happens. But with that said, guys, thank you so much. Have a phenomenal Friday evening. Enjoy the game, and I will see you on the flip side.